And welcome to the third episode of Frank Discourse. I'm your host, Frank Regent, and with me I have the inimitable James Fay.
Oh, thank you, Frank. Hello, everyone.
So today I want to start talking about a very important question. I was out with some friends of mine a few weeks ago, and we got into a debate, and there were some disagreements, civilly, of course, and one of my friends came up with one of the most important questions that anybody could ever ask, and that is, well, Frank, how do you know, how is anybody to know that the information that they're listening to or reading or watching is accurate and is the truth? And even my wife asked me this a while ago. She said, how do you know what you're listening to is the truth, or how do I know what I'm listening to or watching or listening to is the truth and is actually factual? And I think it's a great question. It shows that somebody's thinking. It shows that people. It's a very thoughtful question, basically. And now there's no airtight, 100% perfect way to know this. However, I have a few steps that I use. It's definitely going to lead you down the path towards the truth. And there are some good rules to follow. And the first one is when you hear somebody say in the mainstream media or in the mainstream narrative from a mainstream institution, calling someone something that is the antithesis of what they are or who they are, you might want to give the person that they're calling the opposite of what they are a listen. And I'll give you an example. When they call people like Brett and Eric Weinstein, Sam Harris, Joe Rogan, Jonathan Haidt, Steven Pinker, Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss, Michael Schellenberger, who's a homeless and environmental activist, and people like Glenn Greenwald, alt-right, you might want to give a listen to them. Everybody I just mentioned has never once voted for a Republican in their entire life. So when you hear the mainstream narrative and the mainstream media calling these people alt-right, you might want to think, okay, maybe I want to listen to people like that. And on the other side of the political fence, when you hear them call Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager anti-Semitic, white supremacists, or neo-Nazis, maybe these are some people you might want to listen to. You're talking about Ben Shapiro, who's an Orthodox Jew, and Dennis Prager, who's a very religious Jew, who's very active in his religion. He founded a synagogue out in Los Angeles that he's still part of. When you hear the left calling Jordan Peterson alt-right, a far-right extremist, white supremacist, and a Nazi, and in that same week you hear the actual far-right, the actual alt-right, calling him a shill for the left. And that'll happen all in 1 week, years ago. Well, you might want to think to yourself, all right, this is a person that I might want to listen to. When you hear medical doctors such as Scott Atlas, Robert Malone, Ray Bhattacharya, Peter McCullough, when you hear the institutions and medical institutions, and again, the mainstream narratives calling these people quacks because they went against the COVID and the vaccine mainstream narrative, well, you might want to listen to what they're saying, because before 2020, before the lockdowns, before COVID came, these were some of the highest praised doctors in their fields in the entire country, and most, if not all of them, received the highest accolades, respect, and praise throughout the entire medical world. So these are some of the people you may want to investigate and pay attention to. Now, so that's the first rule that I give, and I tell people to start looking into, if you want sources and reliable sources. At least it's going to lead you on a path of people who are probably truth seekers. Now, because I'm a big fan of heterodox thinking, and all the great breakthroughs on ideas, all the great breakthroughs in medicine, all the great breakthroughs in science throughout history have all been have all come from heterodox thinkers, and people who are heterodox. The first person who discovered that malaria might actually come from the mosquito. Every medical person thought that person was an idiot and a moron. No, it's air, obviously. I mean, that's where malaria comes from, mal-air. Mal meaning bad in Latin, and air, malaria. That's where the entire word comes from. So, all these people, when talking about the origins of even vaccines, you're going to inject the actual virus, you're going to actually inject the disease into the person. That's absolutely insane, and
it's ludicrous thinking, Frank. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Well, I was going to say even the discovery of germs and Dr. Lister. People thought he was crazy. They said, "What are you talking about? These little microscopic germs are causing these issues."
Yeah.
It was bad air.
Yep.
Same concept.
Yeah. All the heterodox thinkers, and actually, I think there was an article. I forget what magazine. I don't want to say the New Yorker. I forget. I just briefly in the peripheral I heard about this. There's an article that just came out, I believe, this week, and it was an article railing against heterodox thinking. I mean, this is the conformity and lockstep mentality that we're falling into in our culture and in our society right now. But so that's the first step. Now, more importantly, the second part that I try to look for is always look at the sides of an issue, and you look at the side or the group, the people, or even a person who's not willing to have a dialogue, not willing to have a debate, more importantly, trying to silence or cancel their opposition. The ones who attack the person, usually via ad hominem attacks, instead of attacking the argument that they make. Then look at the side that is willing to have a dialogue, anywhere, anytime, the people who are willing to debate and are pointing out why and how their opposition is wrong, yet never trying to destroy their careers or cancel them. Just because never in history have the people who have tried to silence other people who have tried to stop any opposition or opposing views, never in the history of the world have those been the good guys. They have always been the totalitarians. They've always been the dictators. They've always been the tyrants throughout history. So that's a very, very important. And going back to the COVID issue, who was trying to silence who? Nobody was trying to silence the mainstream narrative, and nobody was trying to say, no, forget the lockdown. The people who were against the lockdown, people who were against taking the COVID so-called vaccine, these were the people who constantly said, let's have a public debate about these things. It was the others, there was the mainstream narrative, who needed to silence. This is bad information, this is misinformation, and that's how they sell it. This way they don't come across as tyrants, and they do it for the greater good. No, this is misinformation, and people can die if you don't take the vaccine, or if we don't lock down, and if we don't isolate ourselves. Lives are on the line. This is why we need to make these steps. Again, there's always a great reason, or at least sounding a very moral or ethical reason for tyranny, for totalitarianism. Everybody thinks that tyranny and authoritarianism and totalitarianism walks goose-stepping down Main Street of your town. It never happens that way. It's always with, well, you know what? This is for the greater good. This is for everyone's health. This is for everyone's safety. Another great one is, it's for the children. Right. So people now there are these things that are for the greater good, are for our health, are for safety, are to protect our children. But always scrutinize those reasons given whenever you hear those reasons given, because quite often those are excuses being used in order to get most people who have a sense of decency, a sense of morals and ethics, and that's what they're catering to. is so people can fall for these excuses, and then they let tyranny rule under the guise of being for the greater good.
Right, and I was going to add to that. These things usually happen in small incremental steps, where if you wouldn't be against the first step, you say, well, that's reasonable.
Yes.
Let's lock down for 2 weeks. Let's do a little social distancing. Don't cough on your neighbor. That kind of thing. And then before you know it, we're all walking around wearing masks, and taking shots that, you may not otherwise, want to take.
Yeah.
But it all happens. I mean, we saw it all happen in one summer, but it was incremental. These little steps, and you say, well, how could you be against step number one? If you're not against step number one, you're not going to be against step number two. And then it just incrementally grows before, the country or the neighborhood that you knew was completely different in 1 year than it was the year before. You look around and you say, wow, like these are the people I, used to talk to and have civil conversations with. And now people are yelling at each other over these things.
Yep. Yeah, and then wars and families have broken up over all this stuff. I mean, you look at Fauci came out, a few months ago and said that there was and he admitted there's absolutely zero science behind the 6-foot rule. Zero. It was just an arbitrary number that they came up with, and they sold it. And they sold it to 6 feet under, 6 feet apart, stand 6 feet. I still go into hospitals because I work in hospitals all the time. I still see in hospitals signs, the 6 feet apart, stay 6 feet apart, signs still up. And to me, why they haven't ripped these things down is beyond my comprehension. But now, look, everybody is wrong sometimes. Everybody makes mistakes. But honest brokers always admit to their mistakes. And those are the two best ways to start down the road of truth and facts. And there are honest brokers on both sides of the political fence. But as long as I trust that you're a truth seeker, I may disagree with your conclusions, but I'll respect and listen to whatever anyone who I trust as a truth seeker has to say. And those whom I do disagree with but respect and trust, I rarely disagree with the foundational facts and basis from which they've developed their conclusions. And that's what's important. There are people I listen to, I read, I watch. Quite often, I will disagree with their conclusions, but I'm never at any odds with their basic facts of the story, the basic premises of what they're trying to convey. So that's the first topic I want to tell you. You have anything else to add on that one, James?
No, Frank, I'm good.
All right. The other thing, which is somewhat related, but not exactly, is the theory of the ideal. And this is another issue that we have that I see a problem with, of a lot of people having. And that is, we've come to a point in our society and in our culture where if you say that something is the ideal or the best, and people interpret that as anything but what you've just said is the ideal is bad. They conclude it. So just because someone realizes there's an ideal does not necessarily mean they are against or hate or want to ban the second or third or fourth or even 10th best. I'll give you an example. I mean, it's just a very simplistic example, but there's so many people out there now. If I publicly say, I think that yellow is the best color, what people will actually hear from that is, Frank says red is a horrible color.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I never said that. I never even suggested that. I just said, yeah, I think yellow is the best color. And yellow is, the best color for Frank hates green.
Right.
Frank hates blue. I'm like,
I see that a lot with the clickbait headlines. You'll pull up Google and it'll say, Frank Vijon hates red, and you're like, what? And then you read the article, and it's like the second paragraph. Well, Frank Vijon said he loves yellow, which means he hates red, and you're like, well, what are you talking about? Like, like they just jump to these conclusions.
Yeah,
it's crazy,
and it is. It really, it's a huge problem, and listen, it's a goal. When somebody's talking about maybe the ideal of the best, it's a goal to strive for. It doesn't, and many people have multiple reasons that they'll never be able to achieve the best. But just because you talk about the best, just because you talk about the ideal, doesn't mean that you're negating anybody who can't make the ideal, or you're denouncing them or degrading them in any way. And I'll give you an example. A child should have a mother and a father. That's the ideal. A child being raised in a home with a mother and a father. Now, a lot of people, and some people who just heard that, is probably thinking, oh my God, Frank is against single mothers or gay couples having children. No, I didn't say that at all. I said the ideal is for a child to have a mother and father. It doesn't mean single mothers are bad or should be ostracized. It doesn't mean a single mother can't do a great job of parenting and raise wonderful children. I'm married to a woman who was a single mother for years and years and years, and has raised two magnificent adults. They're both independent. They're both happy. They both have wonderful families, and both of them are killing it. So they're just doing great. It doesn't mean a gay couple can't raise wonderful children, but when I say that a man and a woman, or a mother and a father, is the ideal to raise a child, I mean, that comes from just a very basic premise of evolution. And we didn't have millions and millions of years of mammalian evolution. It didn't create the dichotomy of male and female because it's a bad design. Evolution always weeds out the weakness and always promulgates and advances the ideal and the best solution. Evolution optimizes, selects optimization at every chance it gets. And it optimized for one male and one female for Homo sapiens and pretty much every single other mammal. So now the other thing is, just because one cannot achieve or doesn't achieve the ideal does not make that ideal unworthy of pursuit or bad, or means it should be dismissed. An example of that is all men are created equal, yet we had slavery. Perhaps, so people want to negate, oh, what a bunch of hypocrites. Say all men are created equal, but we had slavery. Well, again, that was the ideal. Perhaps that ideal was the reason we were one of the first countries in the world to ban and outlaw slavery. As a matter of fact, the United States was the third country in the world to illegalize slavery. I believe France was the first and England was the second. Or do I have that reversed? Was England was the first, or France was the second? England was the first.
I think it was England was first, I think.
Yeah.
And then probably France, yeah.
Yeah, and then we were the third. Marriage is the ideal for a man and woman. And then you say, well, look at the divorce rate. It's very high. Yeah, the ideal is to eat healthy, to exercise regularly, stretch every day. And how many people have a dessert or eat too much dessert or fast food when they shouldn't? How many monthly and annual gym memberships have been swept into the dustbin of history after a few weeks or so? Well, it doesn't mean eating healthy or exercising isn't the ideal. And again, going back to that example, yellow is the best color. Oh, Frank hates blue. No, it doesn't mean that. And we have to start listening to what people are saying and not assuming what they're not saying. And if we have a question, or if we don't know what they're not saying, or we think that there's an underlying, it's very simple. Ask, do you mean this as well? And you'll probably get a very simple no. But we have an entire media industrial complex out there that just makes all the assumptions, and they do that for multiple reasons. But that's why nobody trusts the media anymore, because we see these tricks being played out all the time in so many situations. And it's not just the media; it's everybody. You go on a college campus right now, and if almost any college campus, and you announce publicly that, yeah, the ideal for a child is to be raised by a mother and a father, people will go absolutely apoplectic on you, because all they will hear is you said that any single mother or any gay couple or whatever combination of a person or people have is, oh, you're saying that you hate all these people that aren't a married man and a woman. And No, it's not saying that, but that's all they will hear now.
Right.
Because
They'll kick you off campus and run you out of town for that.
yeah, exactly. And see, and this comes from generations of being taught how to be offended, and that's what you have. You see and hear everything through a prism of somehow marginalized group, a person could possibly exclude it from what you're saying, and that's all they see. They say, "Well, you're excluding somebody." And that's why we have, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's the I in the I. But that's what we have. And an exclusion of any kind to these people, for these generations, for the younger people, they've been taught that exclusion of any kind is tantamount to hate, or one of the other words that I love, it's an acronym, the SIXHIRB, SIXHIRB. And Dennis Prager brought this to light, and he used it for years and years, still does it. SIXHIRB, sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, and bigoted. And that's basically, which is any one of those, the go-to ad hominem attack for leftists when they disagree with you. So leftists use any one of those, sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, or bigoted. They will throw any one of those at you once they disagree with anything you're saying. And because remember, one of the hallmarks, one of the staples of the left is that they attack the person and not the idea. Because they learned a long time ago, if you can attack, denounce, and degrade the person effectively, well, then there's no need to attack the idea. There's no need to argue with the idea. And so for the past 2 or so generations, young adults are getting degrees, often masters, even PhDs, on how to be offended. And it often comes from the degrees from almost anything in the humanities. And I saw when I was going in college, the growth of the offended movement. And I saw it growing more and more and more, of people looking for offense in any way, shape, or form that they could hear. And I realized that it came to a head. I realized it was a tipping point in the early 2000s. And I was driving on my way to work one morning, and I heard this. It's the early 2000s, maybe around 2004, 2005. And there was a commercial. Actually, this was a news story. Now, I had heard for years advertisements. There was this company called the Vermont Teddy Bear Company. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And it's a great company for anybody who doesn't know about Vermont Teddy Bear Company. You can get a teddy bear and dress it up into any profession. If your husband or your wife is a doctor, you could be a doctor bear, or an electrician, construction bear, police bear, fireman bear, nurse bear. All these, any profession you could think of, they had a bear, for it, and then you give it to Vermont Teddy Bear Company. So it was a few months, maybe it was January, they started advertising for Valentine's Day bear. And what it was the Crazy For You bear, right? Crazy For You bear. And what was the bear? It was in a straitjacket. Okay, the bear was in a straitjacket. Crazy, charming, cute.
Adorable.
Yeah, it's adorable. But having advanced the offended industrial complex. That's basically what it's covered. The offended industrial complex that went into action immediately, and that came from some healthcare, some mental health care workers called up Vermont Teddy Bear Company, and they protested, saying that this is very offensive because there are people who are mentally ill who have to be in straitjackets, and to make to mock this, or it's very insensitive. And Vermont Teddy Bear Company, having become a very large company, like most companies out there, they were spineless and cowardly. They kowtowed. And that's when it occurred to me. It occurred to me that, no pun intended, the inmates have truly taken over the asylum. Because we have, when you think about it, it was at that moment that I thought, we now have people being offended for another group of people who don't have the capabilities to be offended themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
You think about that.
Right.
So we now have people getting offended for other people who can't get offended or wouldn't even hear or wouldn't even know that this is going on. And they probably wouldn't be offended anyway.
It's like making fun of the Amish.
Yeah.
Do they really know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So this is now. I remember. I think it was a story even before that. Yeah, it was before that, and I knew that this is when it was getting bad. When Aladdin came out, the movie Aladdin. It was the animated movie Aladdin came out.
1993, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Okay. Maybe. And Robin Williams was doing the voice of the genie. And when that first came out, there was a song that was the introduction song of the movie, and there was a song that was about Saudi Arabia, and it showed something where if we catch you stealing, we cut off your arm, and it's obviously they didn't show because it's a cartoon, but they did see the sword coming down as if it was going to chop off somebody's arm who got caught stealing. So I guess it was something like the Saudi Arabian Anti-Defamation League. I don't know. All three of those people.
Quite the acronym.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all three of them, the Americans or Saudi Arabian Americans who were against maligning their history, they called up Disney, and they complained because it made them, and they said it makes people from Saudi Arabia and makes the country look barbaric. You need to take out all references of swords. And of course, Disney, being the cowardly, spineless company like most corporate America is, they kowtowed. James, I wish I was there at Disney and I took that call. Because I literally would have done that. This would have been the conversation like, and what is your complaint? Okay, and you are you're Saudi Arabian Americans, and you want us to take out references, or you're Saudi Arabian heritage, and you want us to take out all reference of swords because you believe that it makes your culture and your country look barbaric. So you want us to eliminate Saudi Arabia, correct? Yes, Saudi Arabia. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here. The Saudi Arabian flag has two swords crisscrossed on it, correct? Yes, that is correct. Yeah, this conversation's over. Click, and hung up. And that would have been the end, and that should have been the end of that phone call. So it was back then in the early 90s that this started. And I remember just thinking about that. I'm like, I can't believe they can't. Saudi Arabia, that takes a set right there. You're Saudi Arabian on your the national flag of Saudi Arabia has two swords crisscrossed, but you want to take it all references of images and in the song and lyrics out of that song of a Disney movie because you feel it lends a bad light onto your people. But that was in the 90s. And then the Vermont teddy bear story happened in the early aughts. It was probably in 2004. So this is the insanity that we have. And I even have a T-shirt and says that we are silencing intelligent people so that stupid people won't be offended. And that's where we're at now. And that's pretty much what we have. So now I get that some of this, a lot of this actually, comes from people wanting to protect others from getting their feelings hurt. And that's a subject I want to delve into very deeply, perhaps not now, maybe in the next episode or soon, about feelings and emotions. Okay, that this idea that hurting someone's feelings is equivalent to stabbing or shooting them. And because what is a big phrase that you hear on college campuses all over the place now, and even it's not even college, it's now in high schools, it's now in elementary schools and middle schools, and that is words are violence.
Right.
And this concept has got to get nipped in the bud and just absolutely annihilated. The concept that words are violence. I mean, how old are you?
40.
Okay, you're 40. I'll be 54 in a few weeks. And I remember, and maybe I think you're old enough. You'll remember, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never hurt me, or words can never hurt me.
Right. As soon as you said that, that's the phrase I thought. Right. I mean,
exactly.
We were taught that, we drilled into us as kids.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Like, just, grow up and get over it and move on.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I heard that a few thousand times in my childhood.
Yeah,
Sticks
yeah.
and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. But now we're teaching people, no, words can and should and will hurt you. And you tell anybody anything often enough, they're going to start believing it. So those are the two cultural issues and topics that I wanted to start off with here, James. So now into a news story. I want to now. I pride myself in trying to be as objective as I possibly and humanly can. We all have our biases. We all have our prejudices. That's just the human condition, and no one's going to be completely rid of that. But I try to be as objective as possible. And I do want to attack one thing that the conservative media, much of the conservative media, got wrong. And I still hear conservatives and pundits getting it wrong. I hear people on both sides of the political fence, even the liberals, not the left, the liberals getting this wrong as well. And that is a story of Imani Khalif, the Algerian boxer from the Olympics who won the gold medal. And I am still hearing this to this day, that from the right, this trans woman boxer. First of all, she's not a trans woman boxer. Now, what made me look into this is, and usually from, again, sources that are usually reliable and usually honest, going back to how do you know when you're hearing something the truth? Well, I was hearing this from very reliable sources of sources and people and individuals and groups and news sources that have always been very accurate. Okay, and they've always corrected their mistakes. Now, some of them have already started correcting their mistake on this, but a lot of them have not yet, and those are more of the individuals. And that is that this is a trans woman. It's not a trans woman. Now, what sets some alarms in my head of this story, which made me look into this, was, okay, this woman is from Algeria. Algeria is a Muslim country. And anybody who has any familiarity with anything going on in the world and anything about culture knows that Muslim countries aren't the cultures that are warmly embracing the LGBTQ and especially trans movement.
Right. It's not a woke country.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, they're not woke cultures. Yeah. Okay, and so I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, wait a second. So you're talking about a Muslim country that is going to embrace and support and want a representative of their country on the world stage of the Olympics to be a trans person? They're going to allow this, number one, in their culture. Number two, they're going to actually want this person to represent their nation on the world stage of the Olympics. So that was the first thing that tipped me off. And I thought to myself, nothing adds up here. And then I started looking at it, and she's been defeated by 9 other women. I looked at her record. At first, I heard that she was defeated by 15 other women. Obviously not in the Olympics. She won a gold medal. But she was defeated by 15 other women. Then I looked deeper, and I saw a number, more and more sources were talking about, and I looked in her boxing record, and it showed that it was... she's lost to 9 women. So when I saw that was the other thing that tipped. And then I started looking in the the IBF, International Boxing Federation, or I think it was.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was the IBF, and they're the ones who are at war with the Olympic Committee, and the IOC. Yeah, the International Olympic Committee, and. When I started looking into the IBF, I believe that's the IBF. I could be wrong on that acronym. The Boxing Federation, International Boxing Federation. I noticed that there was a lot of issues with this boxing information. Oh, she tested as a male. She has XY chromosomes, and they still to this day have not revealed how they do these tests. Mm-hmm. There is absolutely no knowledge on how the IBF tests. What the tests are consistent of, and actually, I haven't heard that she tested positive for XY chromosome, which is male. The XX is female. But she did just somehow score through the stratosphere in testosterone levels. Okay, fine. There are masculine females. There are effeminate males. This is something that's been part of the human condition forever.
Sure.
She was born a woman, raised as a girl. She was born a girl, raised as a girl all her life in Algeria. Okay, remember, this is Algeria, ladies and gentlemen. So none of this stuff added up. And that's when I learned, like, okay, no, this is a woman, regardless of how much she looks like Colin Kaepernick. If anybody's noticed that, we haven't seen him anywhere. That's all I'm saying, is that we have not seen Colin Kaepernick anywhere recently. So that's, if you actually look at a side-by-side comparison of the photographs.
It is pretty convincing.
Yeah, you know. So
I don't want to see
again, that was the third alarm that went off in my head, James. But no, the right-wing media and personalities got this, I think, completely wrong. Now, okay, maybe there's an argument that if your testosterone levels are at a certain level, maybe you shouldn't be able to participate against other female athletes. Again, I think that's a very, very shaky argument, because let's face it, everyone individuals, we all have different levels. I mean, so where do you stop? You stop at testosterone, or well, what about just raw talent? I mean, Michael Jordan, look what he did in basketball. This guy was obviously way more talented than anybody else he was playing against, and he just completely dominated the sport for decades. So again, any kind of ability or physical advantage, everybody's going to have physical advantage, intellectual advantages. I don't think that's the criteria, and that's the proper criteria to not allow a woman by every other metric just because they have high levels of testosterone. And again, there's other things about there's no definitive tests that have been done. But again, so all these things, but the fact that she's from Algeria, which isn't a host country for trans movement at all. She's been defeated by 9 women already. I think the latest one, I think she was an Irish boxer, or at least from the UK, somewhere in the UK. I think she was Irish. I'm not positive. She lost to that Irish woman in Japan, if I'm not mistaken, in the World Championship or something like that. Or maybe I'm getting some facts wrong. Maybe she went up against somebody else and lost in Japan. I'm not sure. But 9 women have defeated her in the past. So, okay, if you're a male, what women have defeated? Who's the swimmer for UPenn? Leah Thompson. Leah Thompson. So I don't think a single woman has beat her in just about anything, or beat him. So now I also want to make crystal clear here. I am thoroughly 100%. adamantly and vehemently against any biological male competing against women in women's sports. I think it is atrocious. I think I don't care how bad that is for a few trans women who want to compete in women's sports. I'm sorry. Life isn't fair for every single person in every single instance, and you don't try to level the fair playing field by disadvantaging 99.9% of the population, which is what you're doing in women's sports. You're disadvantaging 99.9% of every woman in that sport by allowing a biological male to compete. Sorry, you just don't do that. End of story. And
Frank, I didn't know you were such a feminist.
Well,
yeah, that's,
Well, look, I don't. Well, that's a whole nother subject. Feminism was and would you consider me a first wave feminist, second wave feminist, or third wave feminist, James? Because I don't know that.
Not third wave, I'll tell you that.
Okay, I'm not really sure all the differences between them either. So I haven't finished reading all my Betty Friedan books to know the difference between all these things. So. Have anything else to add on that one, on that subject, James?
No, I think that's a prime example of a current situation where it's important to look past the headlines and just use a little critical thinking.
Yes.
Like you said, I mean, it was an easy kind of situation to look at and say, wait a minute, none of this is adding up.
Yes.
So it's important to look past those Facebook comments and clickbait headlines.
Yeah, and a clickbait, and somebody then actually I was talking about this to somebody a few days ago, and I said, well, what about the Thai boxer? I'm like, I have no idea about the Thai. I mean, I know of the story that the other Olympic. It was a Taiwanese.
I don't think I know about this.
Oh yeah, there was another Olympic boxer, and I think she won the gold medal too. And there's talks about now the reason why she won the gold medal. Like, wait, I thought Khalif won it. No, different weight classes. So they were
okay.
so they were able to each win the gold medal in their respective weight classes. I don't know anything about the Thai. I didn't look into that story because I know Taiwan. Well, let's face it. I think it was Taiwan or is that where everybody goes to have freaky sexual Thailand. Okay. I was saying Taiwan. You're right, Thailand.
Yeah, Thailand.
So I think this person was either from Thailand or Taiwan. This female boxer, I forget. James, look that up. Oh wait, you don't have a computer in front of you. We got to get you a computer, and you have to have a computer because I want to be able to do what Joe Rogan do. Hey James, look that up and see where that Olympic boxer, that other.
Type in Thailand. Boxer Olympics.
Okay. Because Jamie would have no idea how to do that on his own and look up that story. So that's something we have to do. Get you a laptop so I could say, James, look this up. Even though I have a computer screen, but I can't really talk and do that. And then it'll be pause, and then. Well, unless people want to hear James just riff for a while on a subject, that could be. I have no problem with
just
that.
Hear me typing.
Yeah, I hear you typing, exactly. So, okay, and I guess the other news item that we can close with is Kamala Harris's VP pick, Tim Walz. So, again, he's the Minnesota governor. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody was shocked that she picked him because everybody thought it was going to be Shapiro from Pennsylvania. Or I forget the other guy. I think he was from Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. He was like those are the two running, the two big prospects that she might have picked for.
Right.
And then she picks Tim Walz because we always thought, okay, she's going to get somebody that's going to kind of bring her platform and bring her campaign more to the center.
Sure.
And then she picks a guy, Tim Walz, who is maybe, it's as hard as it is to do, left of Kamala Harris.
I've heard him described as the dollar store Bernie Sanders.
Why the dollar store? I haven't heard that.
He's a cheap knockoff Bernie Sanders.
I see. A cheap knockoff. Yeah. But I mean, listen, it's tough to get left of Kamala Harris because she was voted the most quote unquote liberal, and again they
her voting record.
Yeah, on her voting record in the Senate, and again they misused that word liberal. No, she was the most left, and she had a record even further left than Bernie Sanders did. And that's
hard to do.
Yeah, it is. But she achieved it.
You got to wake up every morning with that goal.
Yeah,
yeah.
So, but hey, she's a winner. She did it. She had that goal, and she met that goal. So, and then Tim Walz, who is one of the most leftist governors there is in our country, and so I was shocked. I was very surprised. I know much. I haven't really done a deep dive in him, but I did look at some of his policies and what he voted for. I mean, he just fueled the fires during the entire started all the riots. George Floyd, he fanned a lot of those flames. He didn't do anything. I think for 3 days, he supported the protesters, the rioters, the upheaval. He denied the National Guard to come in for I believe 3 days. He prevented them from coming in. So there's a lot. I mean, this guy is very far left. Now I've heard him speak, and I've heard recordings of him speak. He's an absolutely dynamic public speaker. You could tell he is so relaxed, so at home with a microphone in front of a crowd, and he's great. I mean, he's comes across as he is a polished politician who really does sound like he's pretty down to earth, and he comes across very, very likable. So I don't know, maybe that's the reason why she picked him, because now usually you don't want somebody to outshine the president. You don't want the vice president nominee to outshine the presidential candidate.
Right.
There's a reason why bridesmaids' dresses are ugly. Okay, you don't want to outshine the bride.
Right.
So
it would be the same reason why Obama picked Biden.
Yes.
It was just a folksy older guy. Who could just bring the core part of the party.
Uncle Joe.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I maybe that's why, but again, that doesn't. But we are in a world now that nothing makes sense anymore, and it's so hard to predict anything. One of the things that I don't know if you have. I'm sure you have some thoughts. I'd like to hear your thoughts, James, of how is it possible that Kamala, who no one liked 20 minutes ago. And nobody, even Democrats, didn't like Kamala.
Right,
I mean, she was I think she had the lowest rating of any vice president.
Probably.
Of all time.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, she becomes the nominee. She becomes the nominee, and which with no process whatsoever.
Right.
It was almost like a
Gerald Ford type thing.
Yeah, it was like a pseudo coup, or something, or a fall coup that happened, and just Joe's going to step down, and Kamala now, without any process of usual process of electing or picking a candidate, and she just becomes the new candidate.
Yeah, I think they used to pick Roman emperors the same way.
Yeah.
Be like, well, you're too old now. Well, I'm in charge.
Exactly.
It's like, what? Like, that's never how it worked in America.
Yeah, so I don't know how the most unpopular vice president, I don't know, maybe that picture of Time magazine really just absolutely enthralled people at, looking up at the sky as if she's this, great pontificator of philosophical ideas. It's just amazing, the machinery of our media and how it goes into action.
What a great country,
like
Frank. You could be the least popular vice presidential candidate and be the nominee.
Yeah.
And no one voted for you.
Yeah, and now you're 4 points ahead in the polls of a guy who just had 5 minutes of some sympathy, of national sympathy, because he was, an assassination attempt was made on him. So I don't understand the poll. Not that I really, again, this is the problem we have. I don't trust polls, really, or very many polls, if not... I don't trust most polls out there. So when I see these polling numbers, when actually it was Don Lemon just recently, he's off of CNN, he's out of CNN, but I think he still has his podcast or show, whatever, online. Don Lemon was in Atlanta. I'm almost positive it was Atlanta. And here he is interviewing all these people, okay? And they were black people, black population in Atlanta, of who they're voting for. And just about everybody was Trump, all these black people, Trump. He was shocked. He was absolutely flabbergasted that all these black people were voting or were saying that they're supporting Trump. And when I see this sea change, I mean, I like I said, I work in these kitchens in hospitals, and I would say the vast majority of every hospital I work in, it's predominantly the workers and the kitchen workers, the cooks and all that are black and or Hispanic, or Latin. And I got to say, I mean, from 2016 to now, I have seen such a sea change. I would say the vast majority of, and I've become very good friends with a lot of these people. I've become very friendly with a lot of these people. I break bread. I have lunch with some of these people, and the amount of blacks and not so much Hispanics. There's some Hispanics, but the amount of black people are like, oh, Trump, absolutely. Trump. That's all they're talking about. Absolutely Trump. I was so much better off under Trump than under this guy. And then I drive down the street. I don't know if I've seen a single Harris Walz sign in front of anybody's home or on the lawn. I don't think I've seen one. And I drive all over the Rockland County and Bergen County here in New Jersey.
Sure.
I don't think, but I see Trump signs everywhere. And then I look at these polls. Oh, they're leading by 4, leading by 5, 4.
But those are national polls. Is that what you're saying?
I guess they're national polls.
Well, those are notoriously, incorrect. And
I mean, New York Times did have, a 93% chance that Hillary was winning in 2016?
Right. Well, what I mean is that the national polls are like, mostly could be discounted because that's not the way the system works, the electoral system.
Yes.
They use those polls to kind of show their narrative, but it doesn't really, it's not reflective of the actual, election night, of how things will come out with the electoral college votes and things like that.
Yeah. I just don't get it. I don't know. Are they?
I would say that's why they're always surprised when it doesn't work out. Like, all the polls said this would happen. Yeah. It's like, well, those polls aren't accurate to the actual political system.
But the polls often, granted, you can go all the way back in the 50s. Dewey, beats Truman, so you can go back in history and see all this stuff for a long time. But there was usually some kind of reputable, or at least a trustworthy source. But all these polls that I'm looking at, I just have Trump behind, and I just. And it's not like we live in a very conservative area of the country. We're in the metropolitan tri-state area, which is blue, and blue. Connecticut, New York, New Jersey.
Sure.
All blue, very Democrat, very liberal. And yet, again, I don't see these signs anywhere. I don't see bumper stickers. I see I think I saw one bumper sticker so far.
Yeah.
But that's it.
But and then Trump was behind in the polls 2016 as well. So that's true. Anything to discount.
And it seems that Kamala is taking a page out of Hillary's campaign book of not showing up for anything and not doing campaigning not doing interviews. So I think at least Hillary did interviews.
Yeah. As long as she was given the questions before.
Well, absolutely. No, she wasn't given the questions. She gave the questions to the interviewers. That's how that worked. So she was giving the interviewers, and they had to follow and ask these questions, and then she would act as if it was some kind of spontaneous answer. There were never interviews, and there's a lot of people. There's celebrities who do that.
Right.
And I just can't say that's not an interview. That is a premeditated monologue. That's what that is. It's not an interview. An interview is to get to know somebody. And that's why nobody still, Bill Clinton probably knows Hillary Clinton, and their daughter probably knows Hillary, and maybe a handful of other people that maybe have worked with her or for her for years. But other than that, the general public, they don't know who Hillary is. Nobody knows because she's never had a real interview with anybody.
Yeah.
So I think, is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
No, I think we covered everything.
I believe we did. So, again, thank you for listening. Press like and subscribe, everyone. Send this out to every single human being you know. And we will see you next time. Thank you for listening.